So where we are, part 3, I want to step back because I think we have to look at what's going on around us, because some of the changes that we see in the church inside actually have a lot to do with what's happening outside. The first thing I want to talk about is the neighborhood changes. Now, none of this stuff is probably news to you. I want to name it. So, this is Buell Mansion. I don't remember, but at one time, the people who lived there used to come to this church. Okay? And it's not that far away. I actually doubt that they walked down the hill here, but they might have. This neighborhood, that's part of our neighborhood, they used to have people like the Buells in, is now part of a census tract that starts across the street. I have to move over because I don't want to be in this slide. It starts across the street here, and on the north side of Sharon, it goes as far as Sharpsville Avenue, and on the south side of State Street goes all the way to Stambaugh Avenue. That census tract now has a median household income of $17,000 a year. Okay? That's our neighbors. It's not the Buells anymore. The census tract that's the West Hill, and when I was doing some of this preliminary research, I actually had the wrong numbers here, and I apologize if I gave somebody some other things. But the West Hill, which is a census tract starting at the church and going up the hill to the state line, the median household income is $30,000. And the census tract in Ohio, just across the border, which is also our neighborhood, I mean, you walk there, we have a lot of people there, is $29,500. Now, for a family of 4 in Mercer County, it requires an income of $50,000 just to be able to make an average rent payment, have a used car that's running, get back and forth to work, pay for food, health insurance, whatever. So this is, $17,000 is way bad. $30,000 is maybe not poverty level, but it's really low. The other piece is if you take those 3 census tracts and put them together, between 1990 and 2002, we've lost 3,009 people from our neighborhood. Okay? Again, Sharon, this area is shrinking. Sorry. But, there was a time, and when I talked to some of our folks who've been around a long time, they talk about coming down from the West Hill. I mean, people walked. This was a neighborhood church. People came here. Well, our neighborhood lost 3,000 people. And those census districts, that's 3,000 out of a total of about 14,000. I mean, it's like a quarter of the people. Next slide. We also have some lifestyle changes that are happening in the life around us. Now open Sundays. Everything is open Sundays. I had 2 people that have come as potential new members. One actually did come to church one week with 3 kids. Another one who had a couple kids that I met with who were interested in this, that work Sundays. They can't be here every week. I think if they could have been, they'd actually have been here every week since then and probably be getting integrated in the parish. But they couldn't because they were working. And so now, talk to them, send them an email, whatever. But whether or not they'll ever actually make it to be integrated in any way is hard to know. A number of people in the parish have to work Sundays at this point. And then there's everything else that happens Sundays, soccer games, travel, whatevers, any of those things. How to connect with out-of-town grandkids. So if you need a book, you can write down the title and the website. This is another part of reality. We have a lot of people in our parish who have out-of-town grandkids. And if they can be someplace else, they're going to be with the grandkids, especially on a long weekend. And who can blame them? The other piece is that we've had a number of people come to the church more recently who aren't from here, who may have 2 sets of grandparents that live in 2 totally different communities. So, especially if they have younger kids, if there's a weekend that they can go see one set of grandparents, another weekend go see the other set of grandparents. That's kind of what happens. And so we have people scattering all over the place, especially on weekends. The third thing is just life. This is gratefully not my Google Calendar, although there are weeks it feels like that, and then you have, scream whatever all over the place. And, people's lives are just busy and full, and they haven't spent Saturday doing yard work in the morning and watching a game in the afternoon and then going to bed early and getting up for church. I mean, it's a 24/7 kind of lifestyle. So getting people's attention is different. The next thing I want to talk about a little bit is the difference between de-churched people and unchurched people. And this is a huge shift in our culture, because this affects who we can reach as new members or for the church. De-churched people are people who grew up in a church and then they left. But they understand and value what a church is. They might actually feel guilty that they're not in church now. They want to be in a church, many of them, or to find a church, or when they get to a place in their life when now they have the time and energy to start asking questions at a deeper level again, or think about where they want to go, they'll start to reach out and find a church. And these are the people that we are very good at reaching at St. John's. When these people show up Sunday morning, they come, they feel that there is a real spirit in the worship, they sense that it works, the preacher's cute, all these things happen, and they want to be here, but that's because they know what church is already. They know that an important part of being in church is being in church Sunday morning. They're the people, and we say it, right? If you say, I'm going to church, it means you're going to Sunday morning worship. If you're going down to the church, you might be cooking something, right? These are the people that understand that. And part of our problem is those people are aging just like the people in the churches are. So people 55 and older, most of them probably grew up with some church background. That's different for people who are younger. And so they don't have that to draw on. I just want to say a word about former and inactive Roman Catholics here as well. Because, first of all, for about 20 years in the 70s and 80s, the Episcopal Church was able to keep growing by people coming from other churches. Primarily Roman Catholics, Marian Baptists. I mean, that kind of thing. We're in nice Switzerland, everybody got along. It worked. But Roman Catholics, even though they love the service when they come here, they're not likely to come to a non-Roman Catholic church unless there's a marriage or some other thing that really kind of shakes them out. And so that's just worth knowing, because our area has a lot of Roman Catholics. A lot of the de-churched people in this area are former Roman Catholics. Then there are unchurched people. Sometimes they're called nuns, N-O-N-E-S. Not like Catholic nuns, but nuns as in none of the above. Because on the surveys that get done under religious preference, they put none. And they really don't have it. These are people, they were not brought up in a church. They don't know what church is or why it's important. They may never have set foot inside a church building. Randy had people from the lunch one day, and Catherine, they'd never been in a church. They went up to the sanctuary like it was a field trip. They didn't know what it was. That can be hard for us to imagine. But so these folks, many of whom are younger, 40, 50 and younger, they don't know you're supposed to do something Sunday morning. They don't know why you possibly would. I mean, maybe you want to do something nice, help at a soup kitchen or something, but why would you get up Sunday morning to go and sing these songs that they've never heard? And that's whether it's traditional hymn songs or whether it's contemporary Christian music or whatever it is, they don't know it. There's no warm, fuzzy feeling associated with going back to it. And so how they can be reached is a whole other thing. They also don't know the story at all. If they know Jesus, it's something about Christmas. They don't know any of the Old Testament stories. They don't know Moses, Abraham, Noah. They don't know any of these things. They don't know the Easter story at all. And this is increasingly who's around us. Okay? And they're the people who might show up at the lunch, but they're not going to come Sunday morning. Because that doesn't even make sense to them. Okay. So that's a lot of introduction. And what I want to do now is lay out basically what I see as two places where we can go. And these aren't plans, these are directions. So the first option is basically to stay the course. Keep doing what we're doing. The first piece of this is keeping Sunday morning worship attendance as our goal, or at least the Sunday morning thing as our goal. And that's pretty much where we are now. If we want anything to happen at church, for the most part, it needs to happen Sunday morning. That's when we can get people to show up, except for tonight, which is wonderful. If we want to do adult ed, mostly Sunday morning if we're going to get people. If we want to do children's education, it's Sunday morning, or else they're not coming back. If we, we're starting to get a different sense of it, but basically we think about, okay, if we're doing some other kind of outreach, it becomes successful beyond just being a good thing, which is successful in itself. But if we get somebody to come to church Sunday morning, people sort of say, will anybody come Sunday morning from here? That's what we see as accomplishing what the church is supposed to do. And some of that is even part of why we went to get a youth and family person to try that as an experiment is because there are too many different things going on Sunday morning for one clergy person to be able to touch base with all the things going on, because everything was happening at that time. Stay the course also probably means focusing on the two parts of our purpose statement that I think we're really good at. Worship God, care for people. Those aren't bad. Those are very, very good, and we're very, very good at them. But staying the course means continuing to focus there. What could this sign say to get you here Sunday? That is an advertisement to de-churched people, right? There's people who are driving by who feel guilty that they're not in church. They hear their grandmother's voice, why weren't you in church? Who told you to stay out partying Saturday night when you should be at church at 8 o'clock Sunday morning, right? We can do well reaching those people, probably better than with a sign like that. But we can continue to make that the focus of who we try to reach out to. And we can keep doing this with prayer, attention, and excellence and reach those folks. And if we just keep doing that, this is what I think we come to in 10 to 15 years. Just the age and the giving numbers we saw means that we continue to decline in people and in giving, even as we bring in some new people. Because there are all these people out there that aren't active anymore that are still contributing. And there are people that are active that aren't going to be able to be as active. We probably end up with one Sunday morning service. I don't know how long we can keep running to anyway, given numbers that go down. But at some point, it's not worth having two services with 30 people when you can have one service with 60 people. Probably end up not able to pay a full-time clergy person. I saw those numbers I showed you with the ages and stuff. I went home, I said to Jane, wow, what am I gotta find a job if I'm staying here. I don't think that's the case, but I do want to stay here, and if we need to make transition, we gotta figure out what those are. but you're not going to be able to pay a priest. We'd probably use the endowment funds, of which we'll have $100,000 a year coming in, to keep the building up. Which may not be the most missional, but we're not going to succeed in anything if the building collapses either. And so we continue what we're doing, using money, keep the building, keep a sexton, have some maintenance, get a lot of people using the facility, doing things, and having a small core worshiping community. 30, 50, 70 people on a Sunday morning getting together, having a beautiful service. Hold on to Ron. But that's where we're heading. Yeah, we're holding on to Ron. Whatever this says, we're holding on to Ron. And that's possibly sustainable until we get to a point where things sort of shrink until we have to do a next thing, and whatever else happens. But that's kind of where we're headed. That's option one if we stay the course. And I don't think this is the goal, but I also don't think this is a horrific tragedy either. There's stuff we can still pass on. Or there's option two. And option two has two components. The first is to honor lifelong members, and the second is to prepare for the next generation. And both are incredibly important. So Jesus said, I will build my church. He didn't say, you build my church. He said, I will build my church. And he said, you go make disciples. And so I think part of what our goal needs to be is to make disciples and trust Jesus to build his church. So the first part of option two is to honor lifelong members. And this is not a throwaway, this is key. We have people who have been here for decades, who have invested their lives in this place, who have gone above and beyond with everything anybody has ever asked them to do, who love God, who love this community, and we got to take care of them whatever happens. And part of that means things like making sure there's a Sunday worship service, however we reach whoever, that is as close to what we can do and have always done traditionally as we can make it. Again, can we do right one and right two every week? I don't know. But we can do something that's St. John's worship the way it's been done. That has to happen. We need to keep making sure there's pastoral care. People have Eucharistic visitation, other visits, whatever people need. To have funerals done with integrity. And to just honor the legacy of people that have been here, because they are an essential part of our community. So whatever else we might be looking at, thinking at, whatever changes we might want to make or happen, we have to honor the people that have been here and built this place and make sure that their needs are met. So that's the first step of whatever we do. Go back.
Sorry.
One of the ways we honor them is, for example, no happy clappy funeral music. Just to make that clear.
That was worth skipping.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
For the next generation.
The second piece is prepare for the next generation. And there's a number of parts of this. One of the main pieces here, though, is to move the goalpost from Sunday morning participation to discipleship in all aspects of life. So that instead of thinking about church as being what we do Sunday morning, what we do as part of church is disciples for Jesus in all kinds of parts of our lives. So that it's not just getting together one day a week, but it's throughout the week. And I think there's a sense of that, but we need to actually think about that more intentionally. It's moving from this Sunday morning community to a whole life community. And actually the people, you look back at people who've been here for decades, they grew this whole life community. I mean, they had this whole life community. They raised their kids together. They still talk on the phone, do all that together. They're in that community. But I think especially for the younger folks who need to figure out how to make this commitment, how to pass the church on to the next generation, that's folks 40, 50, younger, there's a way in which coming Sunday morning can be where we connect with church, and then we go back around the rest of our lives. And that's not going to be a way that we can bring people, especially when we talk about the unchurched people, to come in. They're not going to come in Sunday morning and connect. They need to connect throughout their whole lives in different places, and we need to think about that. We need to focus on the growing as Christians piece of the purpose, as well as the worship God and care for people. That's got to be something that isn't just for the kids, but that's for everybody. And that's part of what we all do and take seriously in what it means to be church. We need to have a clear path for discipleship. And what does that mean? Well, I don't know exactly. But part of what it means is when people come to St. John's, that goal is not to say, okay, if you keep coming Sunday morning, you're doing what you're supposed to do. But instead we need to be able to say, this is what it means in different aspects of your life to actually be a disciple of Jesus. Here are the things that you need to do to transform your life. These are the things that are going to help you worship God and care for people and grow as Christians in all different settings. And then when people come to the church, they can come to a worship service Sunday morning. They could come to the lunch. They could come to some small group. They could come to an outreach piece. They could be a member of another congregation that wants to join us for some event, activity, whatever. And we can say, here are the things that we hope that you will be able to do. Here's the things you'll be able to learn. Here's the ways you'll be able to grow. And I don't think that's an entirely new concept to us, but I don't think we've really been living into that kind of an understanding of what it means to be a church. And so, here's thoughts about discipleship is, how do we engage in all those areas of discipleship as individuals and together as a parish that people can be brought into them? And go to the next slide. The tree here is one model, and it's a model put out by somebody, Bob Logan, and he's got some nice resources with it. It's not the only way to do this, but to think about things like, in terms of discipleship, experiencing God, intentionally, consistently engaging with God so that we open ourselves up to Him. And that can happen in church, but that can happen in other places. Responding to God so that we actually try to listen to what God's telling us and expect our behavior to change in line with what He's telling us. So that we don't have the experience Sunday morning and then go home, but that we actually hear and then do it. And, all of us are involved in these in different levels and in different ways, but to actually make that more intentional about what we do as a church. Sacrificial service, how we bless others, how we, give, how we give ourselves to each other. We do that in good ways. And we see lunches, we see some of our outreach projects, how we can do that more consistently. Generous living, whether that's giving, hospitality, or in other ways. Using the gifts that God gave us in ways that are just generous to people so that our lives are a blessing. Disciple making, which is probably not something we're very good at as Episcopalians. But thinking about those unchurched people that are out there and how we actually have spiritual conversations with them. Many of them actually want to have spiritual conversations, but are we comfortable doing that? Can we explain to them who Jesus is and then how they could come and do some of these things with us to be disciples? Personal transformation. This is where it gets scary, right? If I'm encountering God, things are happening. Some things should be happening in my life. I should be able to give forgiveness. I should be asking for forgiveness. I should find myself able to pray for myself and with other people and see some fruits born in my life in different ways that people might think that, yeah, there's, God showed up in his life somehow, thanks be to God. Authentic relationships with each other that get into a deeper kind of level than just Sunday morning or, talking at coffee hour. And then as those things happen, watching the community transform around us, sometimes directly, but sometimes indirectly, because we're actually making a difference. Now that's one model, but it's one comprehensive model. And it's a kind of model that if someone's coming in who has never heard about Jesus, who doesn't know anything, and they're too old to set them down through 12 years of Sunday school and a confirmation class trip. We got to be able to interact with them as adults and first learn ourselves and then work with them so that we can keep growing as Christians and bringing people in. So those are kind of the paths I see for us. What are the next steps? Where do we go from here? The first is pray. We need to pray for our church. I know most of you are doing that already, but it's also for guidance. It's what is the future for the church? What does God want us to do? It's a matter for prayer. Back one. The second is, let everything really sink in. I know I gave you a lot, and unfortunately there's no clock here, so I don't even know how much I've been talking at you. But there's a lot, yeah. Frank knows. Yeah, longer than the sermon, huh, Frank? I said before, when I first saw some of these numbers, I was depressed for 2 weeks, right? I was scared to... I'm assuming a lot of this is somewhat new to you, even if it made sense intuitively with what you saw. So just let that sink in. Think about it. Nothing is going to be done tomorrow. Take your time. Then ask lots of questions. Ask them of me, ask them of each other, ask them of yourself. What does this mean? What is he seeing? Is what I'm showing you right? Does that make sense to you or not? Is there something else? More explanation here. What does this mean for you? What does it mean for each other? How do we deal with this together? Then there's going to be a sabbatical. I'm going to be away from middle of August to November, 12 weeks. And that's a time to pause. It's a time to get refreshed. It's a time to prepare for what's next. Some of that's for me, that's also for you. You guys have done a lot of amazing work in the past 6 years. And I know it didn't start then. So it's a time we all can just take a breath. We're not going to solve this over the summer. We're not going to turn around 30 years of the way that the Rust Belt has occurred in the next 3 weeks. But we can take a chance and just breathe a little bit and get ready to figure out what the next steps are going to be for kind of the volume 2 of the common ministry we have together. Then, this fall, I love this picture too, I just had to get it in. This is from Social Media Sunday. After sabbatical, we get December, January, start coming together and figuring out where we're going to go. What changes might we want to make? What might we think could actually work? What are some steps here that deal with different pieces? I don't have the answers. I really don't. If I did, we'd have done them already. This is, a big picture piece. I'm trying to lay out, first of all, what I see from the research I've done and from the reading and the things I've done, and then some directions I think we can go. But this is something that we have to figure out together. This is something that's going to have to work for all of us. These are commitments really about choices all of us are going to have to make. But I think that if we work together on this, God will give us answers. There's a whole lot of amazing things happening in this parish. I love this parish. I love its people. I love what we do together. I love being here. And I see miracles constantly. I don't think that we're at a place that God's looking for us to die. I think we really are at a crossroads for some amazing ministry to go forward. And so we just need to come back and start to figure out what that's going to be. Again, Jesus said, I will build my church. I think we can trust him on that. He will build his church. He said for us to go make disciples. It gives us something to do in the meantime while he's building his church. So I think if we do that, we can trust him. And that's what I have. Thank you all very, very much for being here tonight and for, being part of this.